Greetings, my fellow Catholic. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the risk of using volunteers when it comes to your fundraising. Yes, you heard me correctly. There is a risk, a significant risk, I kind of think, on using volunteers. I'm going to explain what that is and also maybe a way around the big risk of using volunteers. Hi, I'm Brice Sokolowski, the founder of CatholicFundraiser.net, a website and apostolate that is completely dedicated to helping Catholics with their fundraising. So whether you're starting out or you're looking for new ideas because you're moving and cruising, you are in the right spot. Today, we're going to be talking about volunteers, but before we dive in, I just want to make sure that you've downloaded absolutely for free the 10 Commandments to Catholic Fundraising. This is a guide that I've written that pretty much gives the best of what I've learned over many years of fundraising now, and it's gotten great feedback. It's been downloaded thousands of times, great feedback from people, so it's like a compilation of what I think you should be doing with your fundraising, on top of obviously what we're going to talk about today, which is the risk of using volunteers. So let's dive in to today's topic. There's 3 points I'm going to want to make, and the third is going to be more or less the solution. So the first two is what I see as the risk, and then we'll walk into a possible solution. So the first risk of using volunteers is obviously their availability fluctuates. I'm looking at my notes as well, which will be included on my website, CatholicFundraiser.net, under articles. Also, if you just click the link below as well, you can jump right over and get those. Obviously, volunteers, they raise their hand, they're very lovely people, and they say, I'm available. Unfortunately, that usually is the case when they sign up. They likely have the time to help, but as we all know, life happens and their availability fluctuates. So they're really gung-ho in the beginning, but then it goes up and down. And so if you give them a task, possibly fundraising, and if you're in the middle of a campaign, well, there's a high risk that they're not going to be as available as they were in the beginning. So that's a really, really big risk, especially if you're in the middle of a fundraising campaign, because they were tasked to do something, but very likely they're going to have to put things on pause. So that's risk number one. Risk number two is it's hard to make them accountable for completing actions. So when you follow up with your volunteers, it's hard to pin them down because, well, they're volunteers. The mindset of most of these volunteers is they say yes out of the generosity of their heart. They say, look, I've got time. I love what you do. I really want to help, which is all great. But then when you say, hey, it's been a few weeks, it's been a few months, you said you were going to do something, you said you were going to complete the task, where are we, when are you going to do it? Their response usually is they're going to get to it ASAP, as soon as possible. Usually ASAP means they're going to get it done as soon as possible, meaning in the very, very near future. However, as a volunteer they've got reasons for why it's been delayed, and more than likely there's not really anything that you can do. So their as soon as possible might be weeks, months. They might do a little bit here and there, but it's really, really hard to pin them down and say, hey, you said you were going to do this, where are we? It's going to be really, really hard to pin them down and say, look, you said you were going to do it, you've got to do it. That's the risk of using volunteers. You can't really pin them down. So this leads us to the third point. What do you do? What do you do with volunteers, and how do you mitigate this risk? Very easy. Well, the answer is easy because it's clear and direct. It's first you have to ask, do I really need a volunteer? Do I really, really want to chase them and kind of deal with this ebbs and flows of their availability? And that's the question number one. And if you do, then you have to really accept that you have to manage them. You might not have the time to do things, but you can't just hand things off and say, okay, this person's now doing it, they're responsible. It's not the case. You automatically have become a manager. So you have to accept the fact that you want to have a managerial role in this concept of fundraising and what you're going to do, as opposed to doing it yourself. So you have really not, in my sense and perspective, kind of like lessened your load. Now you've got to be following up with people, making sure they're doing things, tracking how they're doing. So you really have to accept the responsibility that having a group of volunteers makes you a manager. And if you really need volunteers, yep, be prepared to manage them and make sure they are willing to be managed. So when you tell them, hey, you're volunteering, that's great, I need you to do this, but guess what, I'm going to manage you and I'm going to check up on you and I'm going to push you to make sure that this stuff is getting done. So that's the real situation when it comes to volunteers. There's a lot of high risks with their availability and their ability to complete tasks. And then as well, you've got to become a manager and take on a different type of responsibility that overlooks everybody else's responsibility. I hope that you found these few minutes helpful, this topic helpful. If you have any questions, obviously reach out to me, let me know how I can help. Share this with an apostolate that you think would need assistance. I'm always here for you and to help you. So CatholicFundraiser.net. God bless and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.